There is two crises facing Canada right now. Two fundamental crises that have shown themselves to be increasing in severity. On Friday, Althea Raj and the Toronto Star reported that there was a letter, a list of demands, including that of the resignation of the Prime Minister as leader of the Liberal Party, that was circulating caucus. There has been some question of whether it was a letter, whether or not it was less formalized than this. But it's clear that the caucus is no longer willing to accept this status. What has also been made clear, as Sean Casey has just announced, that he is the third Liberal MP since the Toronto St. Paul's by election to say that he believes Justin Trudeau should not lead the party, or at the very least that the party probably needs a new leader after my former boss, Wayne Long, and Alexander Mendez in July or end of June, and Mendez the week before the caucus retreat. We now have another Liberal MP admitting what is blatantly obvious to anybody with a brain, that Justin Trudeau's leadership is not viable politically. What we also have is Monday's revelations from the RCMP that the Indian government has been far more involved in essentially extrajudicial killings than we've realized. They have been involved with paying Canadian organized crime to kill more people, or at least to attempt to kill more people than just the killing that Justin Trudeau mentioned last year. It is another demerit from the Modi government. It is a crisis in the sense that India is again nominally an ally. But what we have is a situation where the Liberals are facing a political crisis at home, and the country is facing both a domestic crisis in the sense of, okay, what are we doing to stop this from happening, and also an international crisis because this is a foreign country and a foreign ally. But what we have is a situation that makes clear one very real thing. The Liberals cannot keep lying to themselves. What a lot of people have focused on since the revelations about the Indian government's role in this has been Pierre Poilievre. Poilievre released a statement that was initially tweeted by one of his MPs, not by him. It was then tweeted by Michael Chong, who is the party's foreign affairs spokesperson, but again, not by Poilievre. Poilievre released a statement to Stephen Chase that he was briefed, and if there's more briefing material that the government thinks that he needs to have, they can essentially declassify that information through CSIS, as opposed to him just getting the security clearance that he incorrectly, wrongly, falsely claims would prohibit him from speaking related to the hen dog and the Sam Cooper and all of that stuff that came out last spring. Poilievre has become a target of this because it is easier for Liberals to attack him than to reckon with their own failures, right? It is easier to pretend that somehow Poilievre will face some great reckoning from the country for saying things that the, socially liberal majority, the Liberal Party partisans find to be disqualifying. It's not true. It's a nice lie that we tell ourselves, but it's not true. But we like to think that, as long as we just keep giving Poilievre rope, he's going to end up hanging himself, and it doesn't happen. Poilievre is trying to walk a tightrope because nominally, if this were the Russians, Poilievre would be screaming bloody murder about Justin Trudeau's weakness and how this is his fault, and we need to expel more people, and we need to sanction Russia harder. But he can't do that because there are a lot of Indians who either like the Modi government or who at least think Modi is doing a good job. And his perception, and I'm not here to litigate the truth of any of those statements, but his perception is that it plays badly for him politically with Indian diaspora voters in the GTA and in Vancouver, but I think more specifically in the GTA, given my admittedly not perfect understanding of Indian diaspora politics, to avoid being too anti Modi. Okay. This is not a perfect belief. I'm not saying that he is correct in his assessment, but that is very obviously the assessment that he is making. What we're getting is a bunch of people accusing him of treason, that he must be bought and paid for by the Indian government because of allegations, which I'm going to remind people stem from Sam Cooper originally, that there was undue foreign interference in the 2022 conservative leadership race. This is, of course, the leadership race that Patrick Brown, who how do I say this in a way that won't get me sued? Patrick Brown won the 2015 Ontario conservative leadership race by touting his endorsement of by touting his friendship with Modi and by signing up a shit ton of non-white members to the party. He essentially swamped the party with new members. He probably lost amongst people who were members the day of the 2014 Ontario election, but he won by signing up a significantly greater number of members in a way that Christine Elliott couldn't. He tried to do the same thing here. He was booted because there was central buying of mass buying of memberships, and so he was booted. Then there's an allegation, which again, it's Sam Cooper, so it's unverified intelligence that is for some reason being quoted as truth in this case, because apparently everything we think we know about Sam Cooper just went out the window when it's a conservative being talked about. But the allegation is that Patrick Brown, not the allegation, the conservatives booted him because mass memberships were being bought. We know, or we think we know, the allegation from Sam Cooper is, well, there was foreign influence. And for some reason, we have decided that foreign influence means Pierre Poilievre was the person who was helped, not Patrick Brown, despite the fact that we know there was unaccounted for money mass buying memberships in the names of mostly non-white people. But okay, sure, that logic train makes complete sense. Why is Poilievre, being shifty? Why is he not, going and finding a camera and being bombastic? Because this is a no-win issue for him, right? If he goes too hard, it makes it harder for him to win Oakville or Brampton or Mississauga or Burlington, or at least that is his perception of his self-interest. And if he, backs Modi too hard, he's going to look like he's unloyal to Canada and that he's prioritizing a foreign government over his. It's a delicate game, but it's a delicate game in the same way that something like Israel Palestine is a hard game for the liberals to play. Yeah, sometimes politics are gonna provide you issues. Life news is going to provide you issues that split your coalition in uncomfortable ways. We know that diaspora politics are always, I don't say weird because that implies a bad thing, but diaspora politics move on a different level than national politics, which we saw in 2019 when heavily Chinese seats went more conservative, even highly educated seats like Markham Unionville or Richmond Center, despite the fact that the liberals did so much better in with college educated voters. An election where the conservative margin in Markham Unionville increased significantly, but the liberals got a 20-point swing in Milton. Those two things shouldn't happen, other than the fact that diaspora politics can get wonky. It's always been the case that appealing to minority ethnic voters can put you at can be complicated in the with your national rhetoric. But that's the same. But that's true of appealing to female voters versus appealing to male voters, or that's true of appealing to gun owners versus appealing to suburbanites, and that's true of the gay community. There's nothing inherently wrong with I don't want to say pandering, but frankly pandering to minority ethnic voters. There's nothing different than any other interest group. But this is the problem: is that for some reason we've gone to Pierre Poilievre is a traitor instead of Pierre Poilievre is playing like the most basic game of politics. And this is the problem: is that for some reason we're totally okay with calling Pierre Poilievre a traitor often, all the time at this point. For some reason, the liberals have refused to admit the fact that Pierre Poilievre is winning because of legitimate discontent. Now, yes, should the media be doing a better job? Sure. But the problem is not that the media is failing. Pierre Poilievre would not be polling at 32 if the media just asked him tougher questions. Because every time he actually does a press conference, we get a clip of the media asking him tough questions that get shared around on Twitter. The problem is that the country does not want to listen to Justin Trudeau, but the liberals on Twitter don't want to admit this. They want to yell at me for being one of the few people who can fucking admit what is blatantly obvious to anybody with a brain. And so you get all of this nonsense about Pierre Poilievre. What the Indian government is doing is absolutely abhorrent, and we absolutely need to stand up to them. But we also need, if we want to talk about Pierre Poilievre is isn't putting country first, you calling the leader of the opposition a traitor based on loose inferences of intelligence, hey, that's also pretty fucking bad, right? If we want to talk about turning down the temperature, you're fucking ratcheting it up. And this is unacceptable for so many reasons, but it's especially unacceptable at a time when the liberals want to claim that they are the adults in the room. They are also willing to throw anything at the wall and see if it sticks, instead of just doing the blatantly obvious thing, which is getting rid of Justin Trudeau. And this is why these two stories are connected, is that if Justin Trudeau were stronger as a prime minister, right? If he were not polling at 21% of the vote or 24 or whatever the hell, if he was not murdering the liberal brand, if he had not just lost not one, but two incredibly safe seat by-elections, somebody could make a case against Pierre Poilievre and be listened to, right? The problem for the Liberal Party is that nobody is listening no matter what they say. Tyler Meredith made this point on Twitter through all of the post-budget polls. But the capital gains tax increase actually did very well in polling, right? It depended on how you asked the question, but it was at the very least a net positive in most polls. And yet the government's polling is worse now than it was in the budget. A popular measure that mostly targeted the top 1% sent the government backwards, despite the fact that populism is supposedly on the rise and a top 1% tax rise is popular. So what are we doing here? And the answer is that Justin Trudeau and Chrystia Freeland cannot be heard, right? No one wants to listen to what they have to say. I proved that point from the fact that I can't listen to Trudeau do Nate Smith's podcast. I can't. I have no interest in listening to it. I should have interest in listening to it. I want to listen to it, but I can't because I am so done with Trudeau at this point. I'm going to vote for his party. I'm going to do it because, Nathaniel Herfin, I have seen in being friends with him and in being friends with others what this government can do, right? And yet I'm just so fundamentally done with Justin Trudeau that I literally cannot even listen to him get through an interview with one of his own MPs. And the problem for the government is there are a lot of very, very good arguments against Pierre Poilievre. There are a lot of great arguments for why he is, that should be disqualifying for a prime minister, right? That should make very clear why he is unfit to do the job. And every time a liberal makes it, no one cares because you're also, to the public, unfit to do the job. It is staggering how much damage has been done to the liberal brand and to the ability of people to hear very basic arguments. And if we want to fix any of this, if we want to solve any of these problems, we're not going to do it with Justin Trudeau as the prime minister. The caucus knows it, whether they're willing to say it in public or not, they know it. The liberals are not going to win the next election. They're not going to come close to winning the next election. They're not going to win 60 seats in the next election if Justin Trudeau still leads them. We are going to give Pierre Poilievre a landslide majority government because we are too what? Because we're too cowardly to fucking admit in public what we're all willing to say in private. Justin Trudeau has been a great prime minister. He has done great things. He's also been, ethically dubious, and I think a lot of parts of his record are going to, should face severe scrutiny. But he's done a good job. He's done a good to great job. He's done a great job if you have kids. He's done a not great job if you don't. But I'm willing to vote for other people's self interest. Okay, I get it. We are fundamentally up a creek without a paddle if Justin Trudeau stays as leader, because even something like this, even a moment like the Indian government trying to kill Canadian citizens gets treated as, oh, he's just trying to distract from this. Now, I don't believe it. And I think, certain, elected as a liberal, but now sitting as independent MPs for Spadina should shut the fuck up instead of implying that the RCMP are a political plaything of the PMO. Sure, but at the end of the day, it is proof that the Canadian public are done with Justin Trudeau when even an incident like this, where, in 2014 when the Hill shooting happened, right? Even Canadians who hated Stephen Harper mostly got in line, mostly understood that he was the PM and that this was a moment for national unity. Now, obviously, this was not as bad as the death of Nathan Cirillo, but this is a key moment, and the country can't come together on this because the country is done with Justin Trudeau. 85% of the country thinks there should be a change. Okay, 15% of people per Abacus data polling think the government deserves to be reelected on its own merits. 15 fucking percent. That's it. What are we doing here that this is going to be allowed to happen? I'm sorry, but there is no miracle. Pierre Poilievre is not going to fall down to 36% just because he gets asked a couple more tough questions. Justin Trudeau is not the solution to any of your problems. And everybody who is lying to you and saying that, oh, if we just give Pierre more rope or if he just keeps talking, no. We've tried this. We've tried the official liberal strategy at this point, as articulated to me. I have this from multiple sources on the Hill, is let's spend the fall reminding people of the good that we have done and then spend the spring defining Pierre Poilievre. If that's the best you got, fucking resign. We need a serious government in serious times. We're about to elect a conservative chuckle fuck who doesn't know shit from a hole in the ground and who wants to play politics with a national, with a I don't want to say a national crisis, but with a very important moment in our history, with a national security problem, with multiple national security problems, because he literally won't even get a fucking security clearance, despite the fact that he's just willing to lie to the public about why he won't. We're about to elect that motherfucker and give him 250 seats. You'd think that literally anybody else would feel the urgency that I feel. But no, apparently the only people who find that to be a bad idea seem to be me and the fucking readers and some of the readers of my site. And you are the ones who keep me fucking saying this is unfucking acceptable. The liberals to get rid of Justin Trudeau because lying to themselves that actually Poilievre is going to implode is not a solution. What Poilievre is doing and his willingness to suck up to the Indian government is disgraceful. I just fucking wish we had a prime minister who could make this point without the rest of the country hearing his voice and wanting to kill themselves.